Section 6.4, division of polynomials. We're going to look at two types of problems here. The first type of problem in example 1, we are going to divide a polynomial by specifically a monomial on the bottom, which is one term. So we do that a certain way, and it's a pretty easy way if you ask me. We just take everything on top, each term, and put it over what's on bottom, and this is division that we're doing because it's a fraction and fractions mean division. So each thing on top we rewrite with the bottom underneath each one. So we simplify these fractions. We look right here at these two numbers and we say, what is 8 divided by 2? It's 4. X to the 8th over x to the 4th simplifies by us subtracting the exponents. 8 minus 4 is 4, so that's x to the 4th. And basically you think of it like this. There are 8 x's on top and there's 4 on bottom, so 4 x's cancel out and you're left with 4 more. Keep going. We have a minus sign from this minus. 4 divided by 2 is 2. Subtract these exponents. 6 minus 4 is 2, so that's x squared. Minus 6 divided by 2 is 3, and then here it's best to think of this like, well, these are the same, so they cancel out, and we don't end up with an x after the 3 at all. If you think about subtracting the exponents, you would get x to the 0, which remember is 1, so you'd have 3 times 1, which is just 3. So here is our answer on example 1. Example 2, divide the polynomial by the monomial. We're doing the same thing as before, it's just written differently. Now they've got this polynomial and they're saying divide by this monomial. That's exactly what we just did, they just wrote it differently. So we do it the same way that we did it before. They're going to try to trick us a little bit on this, but I'm preparing you so that hopefully you won't be tricked. 36 divided by 6 is 6. X cubed over x squared, you subtract the exponents and you get x to the first, which is just x. Now here's one way they can try to trick us. 5 over 6 doesn't divide, doesn't simplify, so we leave it as 5 over 6. The x squareds cancel out, so that term won't have an x. Minus 12 divided by 6 is 2, but if I try to subtract these exponents, this is a 1, that's a 2, I get negative 1, so that makes us have an x on the bottom. Okay, that has to do with if I subtract them, I get x to negative 1, so we learned that to get a positive exponent, you move it down to the bottom and it makes it a positive 1 instead. That's why there's an x on the bottom. Another way of thinking of it, though, is there are more x's on the bottom than there are the top, so when we simplify, whatever we get, we need to put it on the bottom because that's where there were more of. So this is our answer to this one. Example 3, we are going to start doing polynomial long division, and so this can be a pretty tricky thing. It's got quite a few steps to remember, so that's kind of annoying. We're going to look at real quick a small example of normal long division with numbers because they are very, very, very similar, and if you can do one, then hopefully you can do the other. So we start off here by saying, what do I multiply 12 by? We say, normally when we do this, we say, how many times does 12 go into 25? And it goes in twice, so we write it up here. And notice I wrote it here because this has 2 digits, and then I write it a digit in. Okay, so we're going to relate that in a second. So 12 times 2 is 24, but we don't add 24, we subtract 24. That's going to matter here in a second. When we subtract 24, we get 1. We drop down the 6. And then we kind of start over. We say, how many times does 12 go into 16? It goes in once. We subtract 1 times 12, which is 12. So it gives us 4. And then at one point in time, we were allowed to just write that the remainder was 4. And then later on we had to keep going. So let's relate that to what's going on here. We're dividing by x minus 3. And so this is normally the way I've seen us write our division symbol with polynomials. Okay, we're dividing x minus 3 into x squared minus 11x plus 24. Notice here that we have 2 terms. Okay, and that's what is different than what we were doing on the first two problems. We only had one term on those. If we have two or more, then we have to use long division, or we'll talk tomorrow about another way of doing it as well. So we start off here and we look at this. We always look at the first thing and the first thing. Okay, so we say, what do I multiply x by that will give me x squared? Well, to get from x to x squared, we would multiply by x, and I write that here because just like where we had two digits here, this is kind of like having two digits, so we write it in the second place, not the first. Once we've done that, once we've figured out basically how many times x goes into x squared, it goes in x times, we distribute the x into both of these and we write it underneath. So we put x squared here, but every time after we multiply we change the sign. So it's minus x squared. Negative 3 times x is negative 3x, but we change the sign. We're changing the sign because right here, see how we subtracted these values? Well, we're going to subtract the values here, but if I subtract a negative, I end up positive. So that's the part that tends to get us on these things, unfortunately. Negative 11x plus 3x is negative 8x. Then we drop down the next term, and it's like we start over. We say, what do I multiply x by to get negative 8x? So we would multiply by negative 8, and then we distribute like we did before. We say x times negative 8 is negative 8x, and then we change the sign. We say negative 8 times negative 3 is positive 24, and then we change the sign so that these cancel out. Those canceled out up there as well. 24 minus 24, that cancels out. So in this case, we do not have a remainder because everything canceled out, and x minus 8 would be our answer. So now we're going to try one that has more to it. Well, it has an extra term, and then it's going to have a remainder. So let's set it up. Okay, and it's going to work out pretty much the same way as what we've been doing. Like, it's really not any different. What do I multiply 2x by to get 2x cubed? I multiply it by x squared, and so since there's two terms here, I put it right here. But see, notice how since I'm trying to get x cubed and I have an x, I have to get two more x's, so that's x squared. Then I distribute. 2x times x squared is 2x cubed. Change the sign. 5 times x squared is 5x squared. Change the sign. So these cancel and we get negative 10x squared left over. So now we drop down the negative 11x and start the process over. 2x times what gives us negative 10x squared? So that would be negative 5x. Okay, because we need a negative, and we need to multiply by 5, and we need to multiply by an x. So then we say 2x times negative 5x is negative 10x squared, and then change the sign. 5 times negative 5x is negative 25x. Change the sign. That line there is bothering me. That's not like a division line, so I wanted to take that out. Okay, so now these cancel, and this is 14x. Then we drop to 24 and start over. 2x times 14x is, what do we times 2x by to get 14x? We times it by 7, so that's plus 7. And then we would subtract, we would do 2x times 7, it's 14x, and we change the sign. 5 times 7 is 35. we change the sign. Those cancel. 24 minus 35 is negative 11. Since we don't have anything else to drop down, we're done dividing, and this is our remainder. So our remainder, we write minus, and we put the 11 on the top, and then what we're dividing by on bottom. What we're dividing by is this 2x plus 5. So this right here is our answer.